Go.
Hi everyone, welcome back to another episode of the Nigerian Space CNS. Today we have Ife as usual, we have Shub, and we have myself, Adiola, and joining us today as our guest speaker is Dr. Wade Ogunlano. It's really
Hi.
great to have you here today.
Yeah, thank you.
Hello,
Thank you
hello.
very
How's
much.
how's everyone's
Yeah.
week been? Perfect. So we're
Well,
just
it's
going
been
to speak
fantastic.
on our topic, which is Vision 2020. Perfect. We're going to speak on our topic, which is mainly about Vision 2020 and where the healthcare sector is at right now. So, just to give everyone a bit of background, Vision 2020 was launched in 2009, and in a nutshell, Vision 2020's vision was to make Nigeria one of the 20 strongest economies in the world by 2020. And here we are in 2020. So now get this also, guys. Vision 2020 was launched following the failure of Vision 2010, which was launched in the 90s. So I'm not quite sure the direction that this conversation is going to go, but as you can see, we have Dr. Wale Ogunlan, who is a medical doctor and he does practice in Nigeria. So I'd just like you to lead the way. I think I have my very first question here, and as we go along, hopefully our viewers will drop their questions and comments as well. So, if I can remember correctly, last year, I think around January, the president rolled out Nigeria's Basic Healthcare Provision Fund, which was BHCPF, and the federal government actually earmarked 55.1 billion naira as the basket fund of that project. So my first question to you is, being in the front line of this healthcare in Nigeria, in what ways would you say this, BHCPF has actually, trickled down to the masses,
Okay.
if any?
All right. So thank you for having me. The truth is, when we look at the state of healthcare as concerning Vision 2020, I think we pretty much understand that it's a failed project. Reason being that a lot of the promises and a lot of the bullet points that were highlighted and the targets that were supposed to be made, we missed 99% of everything. So speaking from the aspect of health, I don't know, maybe you read the news lately that the health budget has been slashed by 40%. That's the latest news now coming from the healthcare space.
Yeah.
And this is going on even despite the coronavirus pandemic that is also ravaging in Nigeria, in the midst of the fact that testing has not yet been fully ramped up and there are so many lapses. Just a week ago or so, the resident doctors in Nigeria went on strike because even the engagement, the funds that were supposed to be released to as inducement funds for COVID-19, they weren't paid. They were in fact, let's just put it like this. We are in serious trouble in Nigeria. Let me just, if I'm to be very honest, there is so much that the government is supposed to lead that conversation, but most times they end up making things much more terrible than it used to be. Last year, I think you mentioned the fund that was allocated, for healthcare provision and all sorts like that. The truth is, as it stands right now, the basic healthcare insurance fund is so poor that, and even you don't have so much engagement even as on a community and on a grassroots level. So that is there are so many problems with healthcare provision in Nigeria, and we've not even started sorting them. Yes, so let me just lead and start with that.
Wow, I knew there was going to be a lot to say today. Just like you mentioned, mentioned, everyone is aware of what's going on, what everyone's going on in the world. I mean, with the whole pandemic of this COVID-19 going on, personally, and I think I've mentioned this on the show previously, like I feel like it crossed so many Nigerians' minds, both in the Nigerian space, home and abroad, where we thought, okay, now everybody's trapped in their country. Maybe this will be the opportunity, like the actual opportunity where, our government will sit up, they would sit tight. But it hasn't been the case at all. Like you mentioned, they slashed the healthcare budget just weeks ago. So like you said, I really don't understand how we're going to
We
survive
have
this
God now.
pandemic.
We have God. We have God, and
It's
we have
it's it is by
Vibes and
faith, and
inshallah, or vibes
it is
and
by
inshallah.
faith, and yes, by faith, vibes, and inshallah. That's just it. So yeah,
I
so
really, I really don't. I don't even know
Hmm.
where to start. I don't even know what to say about the health sector in Nigeria. I'm not. One thing I want to say though is I I think it's a hit or miss with the healthcare sector in Nigeria. I have benefited some in one way or the other from the healthcare industry, but then again, it's not like it was not something serious. I remember going to the hospital
When you
when
say benefited, sorry, what do you mean?
exactly that's what I want to say. I remember going to the hospital. I don't get sick easily. Most of my sickness is just from my own self-inflicted stress. But the one time that I know that I couldn't figure out what was wrong with me and I went to the hospital was General Hospital in Sule, Rando, Sule. I didn't. I have a.
okay.
We have our own doctor, family doctor, somewhere in Yaba also. But I had to. That was the closest to me in Sule, Rando. I just walked down. No, I took a bike or something because I couldn't drive. I had to take a bike down there, and I just walked in. I went to see the doctor, and the doctor saw me. He diagnosed what was wrong with me, gave me just prescribed medications for me, and it worked. And I was like, okay, this will work. Oh. Even before I saw him, Sha, it was. But the state of the hospital and everything itself, it was nothing to write home about. And even what really just made me give up finally was when I went to the ward. They call it ward. Someone was giving birth to their child, and I saw pregnant women on the bed, and the nurses were shouting at them that "Shey we did there when I did do and all things sorts like that to pregnant women. No epidural, nothing to even ease their pain, nothing. And I was like, God can never be in this country. Then to now think of Vision 2020. This was years ago. Now we're in 2020. I can bet you that it's still the same state as at then when I saw it. I was like 20.
Yeah, listen.
I
When we
don't
decided
know.
to do this topic, like I mentioned, we heard this Vision 2020 growing up, and here we are grown. But what I feel like what really blew my mind the most was seeing that this Vision 2020 is even failed attempt from is as a result as a failed Vision 2010. I guess I was probably too young to hear about Vision
Mm.
2010, but it just blew my mind that so there's no, and how can you say your aim or your vision is to be like in the top 20 economies of the world and your healthcare sector is suffering? I mean, you
And the
mentioned
sad part
labor
is,
and childbirth.
the sad part
I,
is
I,
we
I can't
have
remember the exact percentages, but
Oh, maternal mortality
mm,
rate. It's actually still quite high. I think it's at 5% or so. Yeah,
yes,
last time I checked. Yeah.
wow.
So and it's high. And
wow,
the truth is
wow.
that these are the documented ones. We are not yet talking about
Yeah, that's true.
we're not talking about the
Mm-hmm.
undocumented ones, the ones that happen in the TBAs, or that's the traditional birth attendance. We don't talk about those. They are not included in the statistics. So that's where we have serious issues. There is a lot of horror is going on, behind the scenes that are not even captured in the data. So, I
Mm.
mean,
Even when we're talking about data, so how do they even capture it? Everything is on paper. We still have paper record now. If you want to go that route, that's another one.
Oh,
my brother,
yeah, yeah.
Well, man, it's I don't know, man. It's so rotten that I don't even know. The sad
That's
part
where
for
we
me
are.
though is we have good doctors. I'm not gonna lie. I know a couple of doctors, and we have doctors. I'm not saying this to gas you up, but I have a lot of friends that are doctors. That some of them actually studied in Nigeria and they relocated to America. And when you see them practice, they practice here in America and they're doing well. Like they're
Yeah, of
really, really
course.
good doctors. Like they studied
Oh,
in Nigeria, they didn't even study here, and they
yeah,
just come
we are
abroad.
made to understand that a large percentage of black doctors in the USA are mostly Nigerian. So, and we also know that there are also lots of in the black community you have Nigerians actually leading that space. Even in the UK, you have many of them like that. The truth is that it's not as a result of it's
Yes,
not
sir.
as a result of a deficit. It's not as if doctors or the doctors are incompetent. You need to understand that the working conditions of doctors here in Nigeria is just as if you're basically like a babalawo. Like that's the way to put it. You barely have you barely have the right tools to work with. Imagine I posted a tweet last week that nothing should happen to you in Lagos from Saturday night till Monday morning. Why? Because supposing if you have maybe an accident and you have a stroke and you need to have a CT scan done, you will not have any laboratory center open to take care of
Oh, wow, they close on
there
Wednesdays.
is, and as if that is not enough, on public holidays, for example, maybe Easter or Salah or something like that, it is even worse because during that whole week, no one is working. And no dedicated stroke centers. There is nothing like that. So I always tell people it's all vibes, and inshallah, just hope that it is malaria and typhoid that takes you to the hospital. To be honest, because there is no framework. The leadership of Nigeria's healthcare system, there is no real framework to guide us as to this is what we need to do. And the problem is that because there is no funding from the federal government into healthcare, as you can see, I hope you guys have been informed of how many of our leaders have actually fallen, have lost their lives even as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic. You see, the problem is that even when you look at it from that aspect, each of those leaders that we lost, may their souls rest in peace. But the truth is that they couldn't be admitted in government hospitals, even including the chief of staff to the president. He couldn't be admitted. He couldn't be admitted in Aso Rock Villa Clinic, and that clinic gets 3 billion naira every year as funding.
Jesus Christ.
So and they couldn't manage him. They had to bring him and transfer him to Lagos to a private hospital. He was actually taken to a private hospital, and that was where he was managed until he passed on. And the same thing happened to the former governor of Oyo State too, who passed on just a few days ago. So he was also rushed to a private hospital, and that was where he couldn't make it. What does that tell us? That lets us know that every state hospital in Nigeria is incapable of managing severe cases of, life-threatening and cases that require advanced intensive care. And that shows. I was just telling some of my followers on Twitter that I hope Nigerian leaders will learn a lesson, but apparently they don't learn lessons. They are still going to repeat the same thing. In fact, it was.
Wait, hold on. No, because on this issue of not learning lessons, there was something we came across during the week, and it was a condolence message. Now, that condolence message, all it said was, we would have flown out Adebisi for treatment, but the COVID-19 pandemic. This is coming from none other than a governor a governor.
Oh,
So even in the thick of this pandemic, he's he, he's oblivious to the fact that
that is what
there is an issue in Nigeria, which makes me question the leadership.
yeah, Deola, I was just saying it that we may not learn lessons from even this pandemic. It's as bad as that. That is the state of Nigerian
We
leadership in
won't.
healthcare. We may not actually learn, and that is where in fact, at this point, I would say that to maybe 90%, because presently I actually run a private healthcare business on my own, and other things that I do. So I'm reducing my practice time a lot, especially in the context of going to work into residency and all those things like that. Why? Because sincerely, I have given up on the system of Nigeria's healthcare. I have come to embrace the fact that in this particular time, we may not be able to have proper conversations on advancing healthcare until they are ready. They are actually ready. Newspaper allowance for senators is about I hope I'm not blowing the figures, but I think it should be something around is it 1.5 million every month, right? Yeah.
If it's
And
not outrageous, it can't be
doctors
true. So I actually believe you. If unless it's
and
outrageous,
doctors are striving. That's resident doctors. That is the future of specialists in Nigeria. They are actually struggling to earn 30% of that amount.
Yeah.
30% of that amount. So the amount that a senator will be using to read newspaper.
Like you can't have online subscription. You have to buy newspaper for 1 point something million.
That's why I said we are not ready. We're actually not ready to have this conversation to make sure that to ensure that we can actually make healthcare, actually improve healthcare in Nigeria and improve healthcare standards in Nigeria. I doubt if we're ready to do that.
I have a few questions I would like to ask.
Apart from
Dr. Wale, but I think Biola, if you guys want to read, we have a lot of comments already.
Yeah. Let me take them one by one now.
I was going to ask.
Yeah, I have to scroll up. Yeah, let me.
Wale is really on fire. Wale is on fire.
Okay, so Wale said, don't even start with state of hospitals in Nigeria. Disgrace is an understatement. Then Whitney said, wow, that's very high. I think that's the mortality rate Dr. Wale mentioned.
Yes.
Wale also said, UCH in Ibadan asked my brother to go buy gloves before they can treat my father. He died 2 hours later.
Yeah, Bill, that's normal.
Yeah.
So sorry. In fact, so sorry about that experience.
Can I just pause for a question for Dr. Wale?
Okay.
I want to pause for a question for Dr. Wale on that particular issue. Unfortunately, Wale and I have similar issues. My dad was in hospital in Lagos. What's it even called? Now, is it Lasut or what's the general hospital around Ikeja? I can't actually.
That's Lasut.
My dad was also admitted. Okay, so my dad was actually admitted into that hospital, and similar story. Unfortunately, he did lose his life in the hospital. And there were similar circumstances in terms of what they has mentioned here, that they ask you to go and buy these items. It is what it is. It's fine, thank you. But Wale has mentioned they ask you to pay for the most basic things. I'm talking about even if you need cotton pads, if you need a bandage dressing, if you need spirit, rubbing alcohol, you have to go and purchase these items and come back. And not only is that one of the frustrations that I experienced, the other thing was, and it's never at one go. It's almost as if they don't even have a foresight to tell you, okay, as you're waiting for your dad to be admitted, go and buy, because they're always, it's not even, sometimes it's not even buying those things that are an issue. It's getting to where these things are being sold, standing in the queue for half an hour sometimes, going back. So now I bought cotton wool, I'm back there. Now I need to go buy plasters. Okay, now I need to go buy this. Okay, go and buy paracetamol. And the me to go and buy this. And it's like, okay, why can't you just give me all these items? So I just wanted to understand I understand that there's no funding, but how is it that the hospitals are not even able to provide these basic like cotton wool, spirit? It's baffling to tell the least.
I will say personally that there are fundamental. The truth is that when the Holy Book actually says that, you say when the foundation is destroyed, there's nothing you can actually do.
Yeah.
The problem with Nigeria's healthcare is that the foundation, there is no foundation. There needs to be a thought process on developing the systems on which healthcare will be sustainable. But we don't have that. There is no system. There is no funding. You will not say that at the beginning. Do you know, the funny part is that Nigeria might tell you that, okay, in 2020, we are going to be approving 50 billion for healthcare in Nigeria. And what will eventually happen is that they will only approve or remit 20 billion. And that is and those are issues, because when you look at it, what do you use this money for? I can tell you that about 70% of what is given is for just recurrent expenditure, like salaries of staff and all those things. There is none that is for capital expenditure. Like there is no subsequent amount that is actually for capital expenditure to ensure that we are doing new things, we are building better facilities, and that our healthcare is actually improving from the top down.
Or even getting supplies. These are the basic supplies. I have a load of them.
Down to basic supplies. That's one of the issues that we get to have, down to basic supplies, because the hospital is unable. Imagine a tertiary facility unable to ensure that, okay, if a patient comes, you get cotton swabs, alcohol, all the necessary things. You bleed the patient first, you take him into the ICU, because you have all those things ready and down. You have to go buy every single thing, and if you do not buy it, if you have
emergencies in Nigeria. So if you what are the case of emergencies? How they what? Wait, I don't even get it. I don't even know how to answer. How do they treat
the problem is that if you have emergencies in Nigeria, you would do better. You might do better going to a very popular private hospital, and that is if you have the funds. Or better still, you just try your luck that you will be fortunate to have a good team on call in a tertiary facility. Most you see, healthcare is a gamble. When you talk about healthcare, it's like a gamble. Whatever you see, make your eye take them. That's just how it is. It's always like that. So every time when you go there, you are just, it's as if you are at the mercy of God. Many of the things that we pray for in Nigeria are things that if you go to the UK or the developed world or in Europe where I studied, you don't have to pray for those things. Why? Because the systems are there. The systems are actually there. You don't need to pray for safe delivery when you want to. When my sister wanted to go to bed in the US, you don't pray for safe delivery. Why? Because you know that first of all, the patient is educated enough to know that you need to go to the hospital, and then apart from that, the infrastructure is there to ensure that, okay, should you run into any emergencies, they will be able to intervene in a timely manner. So it all boils down to what exactly is the foundation of the healthcare system? Can we address it? Is it something that can be changed? If not, we'll just be running around in circles. And
wow.
Okay, so let's catch up on the
story
comments.
of Nigeria, always in circles.
Okay, so Wale said Nigerian doctors are lacking facilities and equipment to work with, because these guys are one of the best in the world. I totally agree with that. He also said it's because of COVID that they are not being able to fly to the UK for medical care. Of course, that's
100%. I totally agree. Even the governor of a certain state has already mentioned that if it is not that there were COVID-19 restrictions, they will have flown each and every one of them out.
Wow.
Yes, and they will leave us to our fate. And that's exactly what they are trying to tell us. That, look, you people as you are, we are leaving you to your fate.
So it's never been more clear. It's louder.
Yeah,
Exactly. And that is and the problem, one of the things I said is it that why are we so quiet? Why are we taking these things as our leaders? And you know, I'm sorry to put it like that. So you know, when some of our leaders died as a result of COVID, a lot of people were saying, yes, you should mourn with those who mourn, and let's be nice. And people were like, please don't try to guilt trip me about this, guys, because the truth is, if they knew that what they are ignoring will be their ultimate end, perhaps they might have paid good attention to it. But the problem is that the people that are left behind are still not seeing the bigger picture. For example, you have a road that you need to maintain, and you need to ensure that, okay, you lay enough tar, you make sure that the road is smooth. What will a governor do? A governor will not tar, rather he will go buy himself SUVs so that he can drive on that road.
That's true.
That is the typical kind of leadership have.
They'll buy
exactly. And that is the same method that they've applied in healthcare. If they are ill or they are sick, fly abroad, because we can afford to buy the jets, we can rent everything that we need and go abroad and receive healthcare.
Okay, let's catch up before on the comments. Whitney said it is similar issue in Ghana, a little bit better than Nigeria, but still very poor infrastructure. Wale also said, I experienced private hospital care in Nigeria and I still manage to complain. I don't even want to begin to imagine the public hospitals, what it will be like. Whitney said, why don't they even have store on site?
Exactly. That's
if that is the case, for patients to make purchases on site, which where does someone want to go and find band-aids in such a situation? And Wale and Whitney are really going at it. Wale said a paramedic car here in the UK or Western world have more equipment than a hospital in Nigeria. And I am not exaggerating.
I see no lie in that at all. Like no lie. I can even say it. Yes, I remember some very funny experience. Like what you see, what people call hospitals in Nigeria are just room and parlor. Something as cheap as a pulse oximeter. You won't find it. A pulse oximeter to ensure, okay, let's know the pulse of this patient, to know the oxygen saturation of this patient, and if this patient will require oxygen.
Yeah, but Wale, in this case now, remember we're discussing Vision 2020, and if you do your research, you notice that the top agendas, healthcare was one of them. Fine, like you said, 99% or 99.9999%, they have failed totally from each government passing the mantle. Can we blame
failure baton?
Yeah, can we blame what's it called, different practitioners when the government doesn't fund them? So we're quick to say, okay, why don't you have a store in place? Why don't you have this? But when you are underfunded and you actually just, like you mentioned, the funds released is just to pay their salary and not really to equip. Who do we point fingers at? You really can't blame them. No one is going to say, no one will agree that if I'm making 30,000 naira a month, that I'm going to part away with 5,000 or 10,000 because you want to store up the hospital. No one would want to agree to that.
All right, let me just put it like this. You see, when we talk of the grand scheme of things in Nigeria, you can't literally point hands on just one person and you'll be safe to say, okay, it's the president that is responsible for the downturn of things or responsible for the failures in the healthcare sector. It goes across board. Why? Let me give you an example. Okay, Lagos State hospitals, usually they will have a budget. So that budget they pass on to the Commissioner of Health, who later gives it to the governor, and then he approves it. Out of that which is approved, it comes straight into the CMD. That is, the CMD of that hospital will have to determine what you will spend it on. And you see, at every level where expenditures need to be made, there is corruption. So someone is always boycotting something. And that is why it will not trickle down to those who need it.
Who need it?
Yes, it will not trickle down. So at the point of the commissioner, you have trouble ensuring that the right funds are spread across board. At the height of the CMD, where another fund is given, it doesn't go, maybe the heads of department and all of that. And then if you try to climb that ladder down to the presidency, you will see that the presidency might even say that we know very well that you people will not spend well what we will give you, so we will give you this amount. So the truth is, why am I saying that? I took a particular example. There is this federal medical center in Lagos that is being praised in the rave of the moment right now. That is FMC Ebutemeta. Now, why are people talking positively about it? The truth is that this man, as the CMD of that hospital, has actually revolutionized health in that place. Everything, the hospital, in fact, when you walk in, you will not know that that is a federal hospital. They are using EMRs. They have processes to ensure that each time a patient comes in, they can quickly attend to them. There is 24-hour oxygen in that hospital. In fact, we now started asking questions that, okay, so what funding is he actually receiving that is making him have the ability to take on this kind of project and do it? It just turns out that it is the state of mind and the state of leadership of the person in charge that determines the outcomes of these things. So really, when we want to have a conversation about the state of healthcare, it determines how is the average Nigerian. When a Nigerian is placed in a place of authority, what exactly are you using that authority to do? Those are the questions that we need to ask ourselves. When you are put in a place of authority, you come and then you're told that this is what you need to do. Do you shortcut the people? You shortchange the people by ensuring that, oh, this money I use it or I give it to somebody familiar, or you expect kickbacks and all manner of, all that rubbish that goes on in the shadows. That is why we are having these issues. It's because the heart of a Nigerian is money first, not service first. When you see people in power, they are money oriented and they are not service oriented, and that is where the issues will start from. You see, I studied in Europe, and one of the things I realized about them, my school was over 100 years old, and the truth is, when you look at the hostel, the place where we were giving accommodation, one thing was sure: every year they will renovate that place. They will paint, they will check all the cables, they will check all the pipes. If they need to replace everything, they replace them. They change everything. 100 years that building has been standing. And up till today, it is. I called some of my fellows, asking them how is everything. They said, "Oh, it's still normal, the normal thing." Why? Because it is a system. They have developed that culture of maintenance, knowing that this is our culture. Every summer, we need to paint the roads. We need to ensure that the grasses are cut and mowed. There is no true Nigerian culture of patriotism that will say that I am value first. I am service oriented. When I'm in a place of power and authority, I am there to serve the people. Everyone is just looking for how you can have that kickback, how you can enrich your pockets and settle your generation for life. So these are the issues. These are real issues that if we don't tackle it now, we are just running in circles. We are not going to solve any problem, to be honest.
Let me read the comments. We're having a backlog. Miss Flavon said, if you have an emergency in Nigeria, just go to a good private hospital. Well, that's for the elite. You are talking about what happens to the common man. Wale responded and said, that's even if you can afford it, because those hospitals are not cheap. Omotola Helen said a private hospital. The last time I went to the hospital, I had to buy gloves before I was attended to. Whitney said, Helen, that is unbelievable. She also said, sometimes I ask myself, are they forced to do this job, if I'm reading it correctly? Wale was also saying, how many of them have the resource machine? Omotola went in and said, in fact, nurses are the worst. Wale also said the government is to be blamed, simple because they are withholding the funds. I'm getting mixed up now, but let's see. Whitney said, I was watching one YouTuber and she took her son for immunization only for the nurses to give the son expired vaccines. And that's a Nigerian YouTuber. Whitney also said, is there any accountability, Dr. Wale, for such situations?
Nobody holds them accountable now. Who's going to hold them accountable?
The truth is that the person that you want that is supposed to hold you accountable, you've already given them feedback to basically close their mouth. So no accountability. So everything just goes into abyss, just disappears, and no one gets to talk about it. And then whenever you have somebody who is accountable, who wants results, they blackmail such kind of people and make sure that they are ousted out of the system.
Okay, so I was watching Keeping It Real on Sahara TV. This lady, I don't know if you guys watch it, and she was talking about a story in Tanzania. And she said when the new president came in, he's young, vibrant. He took a tour to their public hospitals, the government hospitals, and there were no oxygen in the oxygen tanks. There were more patients than beds. And what he did was can you imagine? He resumed to the hospital before the director. So he called the director and he told the director, he said,
at least that one he resumed. What if the director is on vacation?
Yeah, so he told the director, actually told the director that I give you just a week to make sure that everything is in place, oxygens are inside the tanks, everything is top notch. And right there, he called the Minister of Health also and was like, this is what is going on. If this isn't done in a week, I'm actually going to fire the both of you.
Yeah.
And everything was in place in 3 days. Everything was in place in 3 days. So if you translate that to Nigeria, what do you think should be done, Dr. Wale? I know you're speaking about mentality of having the right person, the leadership, as in this time and age, knowing what we know and what you've seen because you are at the front line. What do you think Nigeria needs, starting from the Minister of Health down to the patient? Let's not leave the average Nigerian, the patient, out of this equation, because you mentioned education for the patient also.
I think I would like to start with the patients. I think it's high time that Nigerians begin to have the right conversations and ask questions. They need to know what exactly is, funny part is that if I decide to go around now and I ask that, please, do you know your patient's rights? They'll be looking at me as, what do you mean by patient's rights? For example, many Nigerians don't know that when you go to a hospital and drugs are given to you, you have every right to know what drug it is, what dosage it is, the possible side effects that it might cause to you, and then what you might need to do afterwards. They don't know that they are within rights to ask those questions. And these are basic things that you would expect that all Nigerians should know and be conversant with. But I think it starts with the patient. You need to know. You need to know, what are my rights as a Nigerian as regards healthcare? What am I entitled to? And demand it from those that are leading. When you go to the hospital, you see that, you've not been attended to and you've been there. Ask what is going on. Don't just sit down there and say that that's how they used to do it. And, ask the right questions, engage and press. The thing is, once our Nigerian leaders are such that they know, they understand that Nigerians have this undulating type of emotions that once they start talking about something, all of a sudden it dies off. They know that it's trending on Twitter. Give them just 2 hours, they will forget about it. No, we can't keep doing that. You need to ensure that you are having conversations. Or, of course, I always tell people that let your conversations be civilized. I don't mean dragging like what people do. No, not all that rubbish. You need to call them out, ask them the right questions. When you go, some people don't understand that their senators, their chairmans, and local government heads, you're supposed to be having town hall meetings with these people.
Yeah.
Send them letters, ask them, Oga, what are you using our money to do? Do you understand? Like, for example, in Lagos, you pay tax. Like my business, we pay tax. That's as a hospital, we pay tax. So it is important that each time I ask, please, what are you using our tax to do? What exactly are you? Yeah. So that all these things are things that we need to start asking and engaging properly. And it starts from the patient down to the healthcare workers, down to those who are leading and spearheading those places. We should stop this issue of being tolerant, this behavior of being tolerant to rubbish. That's Nigerian spirit.
That's Nigerians.
Nigeria, we are adaptable. We are, we can adapt to anything.
They've oppressed every single Nigerian so much that we are all oppressed and you can't speak up again.
Exactly, and that is where the thing is that evil will thrive when good men are silent, and that is what we don't understand. A lot of good men have gone silent on Nigeria because even when you start talking and you start telling them this is supposed to be done, people will be like, "What's wrong with you? Who sent you a message? Is it and who you have?"
Yeah,
that kind of attitude.
Yeah.
So that needs to stop. We need to have the right engagements with people. And then two, people in leadership, they have to be accountable. The accountability systems have to be developed such that after you leave office, an independent auditing firm must come and audit.
And we have them now. We call them independent auditing firms in Nigeria now.
They don't. How many times did they come and audit? You have the likes of KPMG and all these big.
But that's where the mindset that Dr. Wale spoke about earlier comes from. Because if you're in a place where you're meant to be holding people accountable and you can easily be bribed with money, then you're not in the right position. And I guess, like you said, we don't put the right leaders in the right position. We're going to be getting ready for our closing comments. I just wanted to follow on from something Dr. Wale said in terms of accountability and asking questions. And one thing I would say, based off a personal experience, is it's really hard to ask the right questions in Nigeria. There's something I've really noticed about Nigeria is that there's not really an open door policy. A lot of people who are in positions to actually effect a change in Nigeria, there's a lot of red tape. So with my experience in 2015, when my dad was in the hospital, it was hard to even ask the right questions. People who you can actually lay complaints to, there are so many roadblocks before you can even actually get your voice heard. And the people who they use as those red tape, unfortunately, a lot of them are not literate. They don't have any empathy. There was a man that was actually meant to be guarding the gates to the ward where my dad was in. And one day, like, he just came out and started saying in Yoruba that, what are all of you doing here? Shifa. And I'm like, are they sharing food here? What else would we be doing here? We don't have somebody who is in a critical condition. So I think I understand your point about, asking the right questions, but in most circumstances in Nigeria, those of us who actually want to effect a change, which is usually people of our generation or Generation Z, because we have that respect mentality in Nigeria, they don't even listen to you. Like, I'm not one of those people that goes around and shouts, do you know who I am? Do you know my age? But I could tell just from the look on the man's face, number one, he thought he was talking to a child just because of my stature. So already he's expecting that element of respect. So so it's almost as if you have to call the brother, the Malu brother, just so you can get something. So when you're talking, even if you know your rights, again, knowing your rights is one end of the stick. At the other end of the stick is actually being able to get your rights to the accurate people can actually do something. So I just feel like from a personal experience, it's not even so much about knowing your rights. Even when you do know your rights, you say call them out on Twitter. Again, if you're someone who has experienced something and say you only have like, I don't know, 100 followers, 200 followers, your voice is not getting heard. Again, like you said, it will almost be like, oh, who are you? And one thing I've noticed about a lot of Nigerian influencers, unless they're actually paid to speak on the topic, they don't care to retweet it unless it's gossip or unless it's something that has already made rounds. They don't lend their voice. So when people who have access to be able to disseminate information are not even doing it unless you are oiling their palms first, you can
Yeah.
see, like you said, it's a vicious cycle. So I don't know where to go from there. But sure, I think you had a question.
I won't say that I'm not totally depressed with all this. Like, it's just like Nigeria is the lost cause. But I'm a very optimistic person. So I want to ask you, Dr. Wally, I'm really, really good. I'm really happy that you studied overseas and now you're practicing in Nigeria. I have a question. I want to know what is the hope for Nigeria? Like coming from your own perspective now, is the government supportive of private practices in Nigeria? You mentioned something about taxes, and I really like that you mentioned taxes. How is the government support for private practices? Is it positive? At least we know that okay, you can go to private hospitals. How is the government supportive of that? I want to know about that. And then taxes and levies and all that. Is the government at least supporting that so that we can know that okay, let's forget about the government hospitals that need to expect funds from the top. Private practices don't expect funds from the government. Is it working? Is the government supporting that? Also, insurance in Nigeria, is there really healthcare insurance? And if there's healthcare insurance, is it really effective in the healthcare sector? I want to know, like, okay, what is the ray of hope in Nigeria in healthcare? Let's just end the show with something positive. That's what I want to know.
Okay. If if I'm going to end on a positive note, I would want to say this, that despite all the odds, we are having a new type of leadership in the healthcare space that springs up from people who are more like me, that have studied outside the country, one that have backed to make a change, two, and are having the right conversations, and not just having the right conversations about health, but they are actually doing something about improving healthcare in Nigeria. I have a couple of people who, like me, have gone into health education. We, myself and a couple of my colleagues of mine, that we focused on educating people from the grassroots, letting people know what they are expected to do. Because one of the big problems Nigerians have is ignorance. Many of them eventually also get to the hospital when it is extremely late, and apart from inshallah, there's nothing else you can do. There is really nothing else you can do. So we are trying to ensure that we are creating health information that can, demystify some of these things that people do, these cultural practices that people do, and put them at risk of going into severe complications of health that might actually cost their lives. So next, we also, when you spoke about healthcare insurance, yes, there is healthcare insurance. And the truth is that a lot of these healthcare insurance companies are coming up with different sorts of packages that makes healthcare affordable and accessible. So, for example, I saw some of the, there was one of these leading HMO groups that came up with this 500 naira malaria insurance that the first thing you do is if you actually have symptoms of malaria, you go to a nearby pharmacy, do a few tests like a malaria screening test, and if you're positive for malaria, you get malaria treatment for free. And there are things like that that are coming on that way. There are healthcare insurance, platforms that are actually really accessible. And I think in terms of healthcare, the private healthcare practitioners are actually leading the space in terms of ensuring that healthcare the space can actually be developed. I think just a few, was it up to a year ago, we had the first open heart surgery in Nigeria. We've had brain transplants in Nigeria. We've had a brain transplant in Nigeria. We've had kidney transplants are always done now in Nigeria. That's in private healthcare settings. So I think the truth is that we have to create the value, and private hospitals have been trying as much as possible to create that value, to ensure that, okay, we invest in getting the right equipment. As difficult as it was, I think our family, the hospital where that was set up, it was actually a gift, a funding that, up to $1 million at least to set it up for what we have presently right now. And I know that there are other people who are doing things like this, coming together, forming a coalition, setting up private healthcare centers that can actually attend to people's health in the right manner. So what we are hoping is, by the time we have more of these leaders who bring in their skill, their knowledge, their leadership and administration from all parts of the world, they come back, and then I think we will also have gotten to this point where we have an educated populace or an educated population that will be able to make the right health choices that will improve healthcare outcomes in Nigeria.
Wow, good. Wow. At least thank God we have some good.
Yes, there's good news. There's always a ray of hope. there's always that ray of hope.
What is the name of your hospital in Nigeria? So at least we know we would have to buy gloves.
That's true. Yeah. So I work in a private healthcare facility in Lagos. So that's Kingsbury Hospital and Healthcare. So that's where I work. And the truth is that there are so many private hospitals that are taking time now to look at investments. Also, I forgot to add, we are also having banks that are seeing that healthcare will require investment, so they are beginning to come up with packages. Yes, investment packages like loans that will help in sustaining healthcare salaries. Like many banks have approached us like that, and I've happened to speak with some of them that they will tell you that, okay, we would like to take over. We'll give you an overdraft to pay your salary, the salaries of your staff members on time, to purchase some equipment that you might need, and all manner of things like that. So we are beginning to have those kind of conversations coming from the financial sector. And I think everything has to work together. Just like, the oil and gas sector, how banks, loan money and give them funding. Yeah. That same funding needs to be open to healthcare, because in time past, it was exceedingly difficult for you to go as a hospital owner and tell them that you need a loan. They will look at you, they look at your books, they'll tell you that, look, Oga, we are not giving you funding. That sorry, you can't access our funds and all of that. But now people are beginning to see the value in the healthcare system. They are beginning to see that, oh, as a matter of fact, this is the time for us to, double down on building the right infrastructure for healthcare. And those that are already building healthcare facilities, we need to support them with funds, and also partner with health maintenance organizations, HMOs, and health insurance companies to augment and fund healthcare, because it's only when there is funding that we can be able to, go the extra mile to improve healthcare in Nigeria.
Great.
Good.
Okay, perfect. Thanks for that. Very good. So I just have to quickly apologize to everyone else's comments that we were not able to read out just because we are really pressed for time and we just need to draw the show to a close. I don't think I have any further closing comments. Thank you so much for your insights today, Dr. Wale, and keep up the
Thank
good
you.
work. I
Thank you
believe
for having
there
me.
will be changes in Nigeria. I believe it will be our no worries.
Inshallah.
I
Yeah,
believe
so
it will be our
yeah,
generation
so,
or
you know,
generation
yeah,
right
maybe
behind us.
most likely it will have to be our
To the
generation.
extent.
We actually might not enjoy
Yeah.
enjoy the fruits, but I believe that we will be the ones to take
Mm.
the country to the promised land. Why? Because I realized it wasn't just people like me, just you know, only me that came back to Nigeria, and the next thing was I won't run away. I rather decided that let me stay back and see what I can do to improve healthcare in Nigeria. And I realized that there were so many people like me with that similar mindset.
Thank God you
They are
guys are
taking,
not frustrated yet.
yes, you know,
Exactly.
almost every single week I get calls from my friends abroad and telling me that, Wale, you need to come out and leave that place, you know, get out of that place, that hellhole. And I'm like, okay, perhaps this is not the time to do that. We need to ensure that somebody has to do the dirty work. Someone has to make the sacrifice. People have to do it. And a lot of people, there are so many guys that are coming up in health and health tech that are doing many fantastic things that I believe we should talk about them in coming episodes so that we can actually appreciate the role of private healthcare practitioners in developing Nigeria's healthcare. So good things will happen. So it just
I
takes
like what
time.
you said, especially about healthcare tech. I have seen quite a couple of apps that seem to be offering medical advice over apps. But yeah, thank you so much once again, guys. If by now you're not subscribing, I don't know in what other language to beg you. Please subscribe. If there are any suggestions on topics that you'd like to hear from us, leave it in the comments, share with your friends, like if you've joined us today, and follow us on our social media handles. And we get to see you again next week. Thank you so much and have a great week ahead.
All right then.
All
Bye
right.
everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank
Bye.
you.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Bye.
bye. Yeah.